Okay, I'm seeing that it's 11 o'clock. We'll get started. Everyone, this is Dorothy Pad, and she is the inspiration and spokesperson for the Caregiver Incentive Project, also known as CIP, a nonprofit organization founded by her father, Eric Pad, with the mission of improving the lives of the cared for by supporting caregivers. As someone who has a disability and requires in-home care, Dorothy understands the difference quality caregivers make in providing their clients with the opportunity to do more than just exist, but to live. She has completed 3 years as a student at Northern Michigan University on a modified program in the theater and dance department. Her father, Eric, is the chair of the Integrated Model for Personal Assistance Research and Training, also known as IMPART, Alliance's Coalition and Policy Committee, which is part of a collaboration between IMPART and PHI called Essential Jobs, Essential Care. IMPART Alliance is a Michigan State University-led training, advocacy, and research team tackling the critical shortage of trained in-home caregivers, a focus that directly aligns with CIP's mission. So without further ado, here is Eric and Dorothy. If you folks have questions, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you, or you can type your questions into the chat. Either way works for us. Okay, Eric and Dorothy, they're all yours.
All right, Diane, thank you very much for the great introduction. We're certainly pleased to be here and thankful for the opportunity that your organization has afforded us. And we're going to go through this as a team effort here. We're going to walk you through the crisis, if you will, and tell you why there is a crisis in-home caregivers and what there can be done about it and what we're doing to do about it and what the fix is and how you can be part of the fix. So without that, we're going to kind of tie a bunch of stuff together. You want to say anything in the opening? So I think she's going to let Dad do some of the talking or most of the talking here, but let's go ahead. So our overall theme, if you will, improving the lives of the cared for by supporting the caregivers. So as we go through this, you'll see that the cared for, a lot of times people think of the elderly, but the cared for are a lot more than that. Certainly the majority are elderly, but they're the people with disabilities and then the medically fragile. So with that, let's kind of go down through our list here. So we are a 501, we're a nonprofit charity. And March 7th, 2019, that's when we got the official thing to that. Founder and president, so I am president of the board and I did start this thing. We'll talk a little bit of that as we go. Dorothy, as we already heard, is our spokeswoman. And Dorothy is also the initial influence on me, or the inspiration from me and our team to get this going. So why did I start this? Well, Dorothy was born on Thanksgiving Day in 1989. She was 2 months premature, and the first 8 weeks of her life was in the NICU. And, you know, the day before Thanksgiving of that year, I didn't have a plan to have a little girl in a NICU the next day. And that's what kind of a overall theme is here, is most of us don't have a plan. We don't have a plan to become, to age, if you will, when we're in our 20s or 30s or even in our 50s. And then we don't know about how we get the need for caregivers. So 2016, Dorothy started college and moved to an apartment. Part of that becoming an independent individual, like all parents want their children to do. They need to be ready to do all this before we're gone. So up until then, though, I can truly say that her mother and I were 100% of Dorothy's care. So Dorothy was in her 20s by then. I was in the Air Force, moved around a lot, and there is not daycare and there is not centers, and it's not easy to find a babysitter to care for a child with a disability. And then also, we didn't live near family because of being in the military. We moved around a lot. So when we moved Dorothy in, we began to look around for caregivers. We began to look through the system. And I got to be honest with you, it kind of sickened me. It really did. So we not only, through our experience, I began to look and ask and talk to a lot of other people and began to see what they're going through and how tough it is and how the system is, I think, almost in collapse. So after that 2 years, then that 2016 started, I was asking a lot of questions. I went to a lot of organizations locally and up the ladder through the state and that, asking a lot of questions and not getting a lot of answers. And certainly I never found anybody that was trying to do something about what I consider a crisis. So with my wife's blessing, that inner part of my voice, that thing my parents taught me and all of us, my siblings, that if it's broke, fix it, son, and fix it for as many as you can. So that's kind of what got us going. So I want you to hear a little bit more from Dorothy here. And somehow I messed that up. I'm sorry about that.
In caregiving, there's a difference between living and existing. If I didn't have the caregivers I have, I'd probably end up in a nursing home or other such institution. And in that type of care environment, you're getting cared for, but it's just existence.
And that's a theme we're going to hear throughout this here. And Dorothy, in a proud dad moment here, Dorothy, we were making some videos and that, and Dorothy said, you know, Dad, is it too late to get Nick over here? I have something to say. And I asked Dorothy, do you want to tell me what it is? And she said, no, I just want to I have something that I want to say. So I showed you a little snippet of that. Any of these videos that we're going to show you little snippets of and that today are all on our website. We'll talk about that. So closing the disability divide, that's Michigan United Cerebral Palsies. Believe in your abilities. That's a phrase Dorothy uses a lot. You know, we raised her to count her blessings and not dwell on her sorrows. And then she definitely believes in what she can do. And she doesn't like lists that people tell her what she can't do. Living versus existing. And that is the difference caregivers make. And we'll hit on that theme more and more. So improving the lives of the cared for by supporting those caregivers, that's really what we're all about. And we'll talk about that going through. And then activities of daily living, or ADLs. And just a moment on that, it set a little framework for where we're going. Activities of daily living are things that almost all of us take for granted. And those are things like our own hygiene, feeding ourselves, our transportation or mobility, and stuff on that order that most of us learn after we were born, and most of us become toddlers and work our way up through that. And really, when caregivers come into your life, it's when we either lose those abilities of that activities of daily living through an accident, a stroke or something like that. As we age, a lot of times we lose our ability to do those activities of daily living. And then in the case of like my daughter and individuals like her, Dorothy never attained the abilities on them. And then so that's why most of us enter into the need and enter into the world of needing a caregiver. So let's listen to a few more people I want you to meet, and I want you to see some of the faces and hear the voices of people that live this every day. Because when you live it every day, you understand what's wrong, and you got a really good idea what needs to be fixed.
There is a shortage of in-home caregivers.
And this is a national crisis that affects our community.
They care for the elderly,
Disabled and medical fragile of all ages.
It's an unseen problem because it happens in the privacy of our own home.
So I'm not sure what happened there, but we'll move along. So there are programs at the state and national and local levels that help caregivers and put caregivers in, you know, some are funded by Medicaid. There's insurance companies that a lot of people have bought the insurance if they need long-term caregivers. And so those programs do exist. The problem is there aren't effective programs to retain existing caregivers or even to create new ones. And that's really where we come in. So I want to end, and this is a national crisis, but we want to end the shortage of qualified in-home caregivers, and we're starting right here in Michigan. So did we think this out? Yeah, we thought it out a long time. And one of the greatest successes I have had is the team that have gathered around me. And everyone on my team, volunteers through BAID, are living this every day. They're caregivers, they're family members, they're cared for, and they are somewhere in that spectrum of living this kind of life every day. So that's the kind of individuals that helped me get to where I work. So first people that I went out and consulted and talked with and I talk to every day are the in-home caregivers, the recipients of in-home care, and their family members, their loved ones in that. And I talk to a lot of them every day. I've talked to well over 100. I talked to a lot of them. In fact, today before this meeting, I encountered 2 of them in the hallway and we stopped and chatted a little while. So they inform my thinking, they inform my way I approach this, and then all those good people that join in. So I did talk to social workers and state agencies and nonprofits, care companies, community colleges, all kinds of different levels that I thought could affect this and I thought could make a difference. And so I spent that 2 years doing that. And then I decided to start that nonprofit. So a little bit of reference data so we know what we're talking about here. Unpaid caregivers or family caregivers often is the case. There's approximately 45 million in the United States. And in Michigan, AARP estimates there's about 1.3 million family caregivers at any time in the state of Michigan. Paid caregivers, there's approximately 32 million in the US, and that equates to about 640,000 in Michigan. 89% of those caregivers are women. 50% of those live at or near the poverty level. 48% access some form of public assistance, and 33% lack affordable housing. 93% of new caregivers don't make it a year, wash out. And we'll talk about why that is in a minute, as what is broke about this system. Why do 93% of them don't make it? And right as today, it's estimated that Michigan is short 34,000 caregivers. And then to do the little bit of math here, 34,000 equates to most of those caregivers care for more than one person a week. And so that's how many people are going without care, or the scarcity of care. Per capita, I say this about the UP. We happen to live up there in Marquette, and the UP has more elderly living at home than anywhere else in the US. So it's a good test ground for what we're trying to do. 49% of us will use a caregiver as we near the end of our lives. And right now there ain't enough for it. And statistics show that every day we're all getting older. 22% of those residing in long-term care facilities today are there only because they cannot find an in-home caregiver. This program was created to keep us from going to those homes, those facilities. Those facilities are important, they're needed. And, but right now, they're being overwhelmed with people that should still be living at home. So one of the things that happens is right now there's a law that says the hospitals can't let you go home, can't release you unless they confirm you have a safe place to go. So what's happening with that, and we'll tell you some of that as we go through the theme here, is some of the unintended consequences of that. And I just a week ago talked to an individual that works at a hospital, and they confirmed it, that it ends up that they end up with elderly or other family members. And in fact, it's a sad thing to say that they call it elder dumping, that somebody will bring a parent or an elderly person into the emergency room and then they'll leave them there. So they get placed in the hospital, and then it's the hospital's responsibility to find. So those facilities now have waiting lists. And so even they are being overwhelmed, and a lot of the in-home caregivers, the same skills are needed at care facilities, and they're hurting for people. So projected by 2026, statistics out of Bureau of Labor Statistics says we're going to be short in our country of 7.8 million caregivers. The projected shortage for Michigan in just 5 years, or 4 now, is 240,000 caregivers. That's about what, a third or of what we need. Additional growth, if anyone needs that, why we're not paying more attention, but it's the fastest growing need in 38 states, and Michigan is one of that. So what are the 3 pillars of the Caregiver Incentive Project? It's to inform, train, and incentivize. And with that, inform, educate the public of why this is a crisis, what's going on. And it is right here and it is right now. It's in your neighborhood, it's in your, and most of you that are listening or are part of this, probably some of you already know what I'm talking about, that you look for someone to take care of mom as they aged, or you look for someone for a family care member and they can't. So we're going to talk a little bit about why the shortage, how did we get to this part? And it didn't happen overnight. So, and what you can do to be part of it and what CIP is doing to be part of the fix. So why is the shortage? Well, actually for caregivers, it's not recognized as a job. It's not recognized as a career. So there's no career path that's set up for all the other things you think of. There's no standardized training. And in fact, there's no training required. It's left up to the companies or to do it. There's no accreditation for in-home caregivers. I already said that. Many companies don't provide it or mentoring to new caregivers. In fact, the scenario is that I've heard from literally hundreds of caregivers is they get hired sight unseen. In Michigan, you need a driver's license and you need to pass a background check one time. And tomorrow morning, you can be a caregiver. Often new caregivers are hired and given an address. And that's their introduction to caregiving. And I can tell you this, that I wouldn't want one of my loved ones to be on either side of that door as that new person that has been sent out.
I got more training as a hospice volunteer than many caregivers get.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth of that, but why it's left and why it isn't a recognized career, because I haven't found any comparisons yet. So, and then often the skills of the caregiver, whether you're brand new or seasoned, they're not matched to the needs of the recipients. And in a lot of companies, you can't even pick your caregiver. If you find someone that you like, some of the caregivers they send out, it's who they send and when they send it, if they send somebody. And so you don't get to do it. Now that doesn't work for all companies, but it works for a lot of it, especially the bigger the company. So can you imagine every day someone new is going to knock on your door? Yeah, there's a lot of misconception about the job. Most people that I talk to that haven't been part of it, most maybe is a little strong, but it's a family responsibility to take care of their parents as they age out. And this is a phrase that I hear often, it's just babysitting for adults. And no, it's not. And the lack of ethics and quality in some companies and caregivers amplifies the shortage crisis. And that, as I see now, as more and more people, there is so many angels on earth that are caregivers. But as we see, they burn out too. But some of the people that can't hold the jobs with supervisors like stocking shelves at the grocery store, they gravitate over to caregiving because you're in the privacy of someone's home. It's just you and the person that you are there to care for. And that leaves a recipe sometimes for not a good outcome. So there's not strong oversight of care companies. In fact, oftentimes care companies are left to report on themselves. And this is something that I've found many times. And we know that industries of any sort don't work good. Construction companies, we don't let them build buildings without an inspector looking at it because we know the outcome of that sometimes. We don't let anything really happen. There's not anything that I can do in Marquette, like cut hair or paint fingernails or be an animal setter without somebody looking at me and somebody telling me how to do it. There's a rising demand. I told you some numbers by 2026, by 2050, and most of us is out of our imagining that half of the population of the United States will be 65 and over. So competition is one thing. Again, you can go to starting pay at McDonald's is like $13 to $15, the sign I seen the other day. Same with other stores. So the competition for employees, we all know that, we hear it, and it's out of sight. Doug was trying to tell us in that video, it happens in the privacy of our own homes, and it isn't out in public. And I use often the comparison that, if we're downtown somewhere and I had a pet with me, a dog with me, and I tied it to a pole and went in the doggy shop, it wouldn't be minutes and somebody would be doing something about it because it's very visible. But this happens in the privacy of homes. And often the person being cared for is our elderly and our most vulnerable of our population. And they don't have a voice. And a lot of times nobody's listening to them. So low pay. Sorry about that. So nationally, I looked at it as of the current data yesterday on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A caregiver makes $13.02 nationally. And that's not in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I can tell you that it's not that high. A veterinary technician, and I'm going to compare this. Some people, to me, this brings it all home. So a veterinary technician, the median pay at the same time in the same year was $17.43. That's 34% more than a caregiver. And they have a degree program. You can get a bachelor's or a master's or excuse me, in that, and associate degree in that, and you have a career path, and it's recognized. And so to me, I boil it down to that nobody made this decision, but I think we're paying more attention for the people that care for our pets than our elderly, medical, and disabled. So, and where the system fails is we have what I call on either side of the door. We have the cared for, they have family and loved ones and friends, and what is their level of care needed? And on the other side that are showing up to care for is the family or the caregiver, and the family and loved ones and friends of them and their level of training, experience, and support. And under all that, or around it, is the availability. Who affects that? Is the care provide company, the local agencies, government, nonprofit, state agencies, state government, the federal, and us taxpayers. Us taxpayers fund this program because we know there's a lot of benefit for in-home. People are happier there, they're safer there, there's less emergency visits, it's less costly to live in your own home and stay there than it is to be in a facility. But right here at the point of delivery, the system fails the caregiver. And if you don't properly equip and train and fund that caregiver, then we're setting them up for failure. And right now, that's what we're doing. We don't do that in any other occupation. Think of that if you were getting on an airplane. And instead of the caregiver, that point of delivery was the pilot. We'd want them well-funded and well-trained. We'd want the maintenance people well-funded and well-trained, and we'd want a newer airplane, not some old one. But right here, that level of training, experience, and support is lacking. And that's why this system is the way it is. So what's the fix? And this is not an easy thing to do, but we need to recognize that in-home caregiving is a career, as a career. There are people that do it for a living. But you know, the people that gravitate toward this all the time, the ones with the big hearts, the caring people, the loving people, they still need to be properly paid because they have a family. They leave every day to care for someone else's loved one. And they need to go home and pay their bills. And right now, that's not happening. I'm not really sure what I'm not doing right. So proper training. And again, right now, there's not proper training. There's no standard training to be a caregiver. In fact, it's left up to the companies. And most of the time, people don't get trained. Proper pay. Again, we've talked about that. But what would be the proper pay? People talk about, you know, a living wage and stuff like that. That's a thing that needs to happen. Certification. There is no certification right now of being a caregiver. And that lacks too, because path for advancement. And a lot of companies and a lot of things take advantage of that there's not any of this. But if you're going to do it for a living, you have to have a way to improve yourself. And then you have to be properly paid for that. And then I believe an independent third party should track and rate care providing companies. Again, if you were to travel, you could on an app and you could find a place to take care of your pet while you were traveling and that, and you could see a rating for that. And right now, there is not independent third party tracking. It's left up to companies. It's left up to organizations that have a vested interest in this to oversee it. And we know in human nature, we know that doesn't work because we don't allow NFL football players to call their own or to throw the flag or to call their own fouls or like that. We have referees on the field and umpires at the baseball games because we know that we need people overseeing. So overall, supported caregivers are more likely to stay in the field and provide quality care. People that are taken care of, people that know they're cared for, the caregiver, that know that they're supported, to know that they have a career, to know would make a big difference. So what are we doing? To train people, establish a higher standard of training and certification. So establish that career path. Personally, I think we need about 4 levels of caregivers, and I call them right now just cheerful companions to the advanced care. And oftentimes people are, as they first enter into, they need someone to come around and help them. Some need somebody to help them with those activities of daily living, whether it's reminding them to take the meds or to do the shopping for them, to transport them to doctor's appointments. In this day and time too, the people that do the telemed and all that, that's you need to be equipped to do that. And
well, in some caregiving situations, I can see where you would be both a cheerful companion and do advanced care.
Exactly.
Because any good caregiver, you're going to become family with the client. It's going to happen, and you will be, for that person, more likely than not, you will be a cheerful companion. But other than just the physical care, there's the emotional care too. And
Dorothy makes a good point. For many people that are being cared for, you're the only other human they see. And if if the level of care they get is 3 times a week for 2 hours, again, you're liable to be the only other human that in a daily basis is in their life. And then we need to be matched to the needs of the cared for. There should be no reason that a caregiver is hired last night, given an address, and they show up with no idea of who and the needs of that person are on the door they're knocking on, are on the other side of that door. In a code of conduct. We have code of conducts for many different things. And again, we need to establish that. We have a Caregiver Academy. The CIP has, in an effort to do this. And our whole objective is to prepare caregivers with the knowledge and skills in order to provide that care. And, a lot of times right now too is, and again, this is all feedback from caregivers, that they're hired with a sense of a rosy picture, if you will, that, look at the commercials on TV and there's an elderly lady, think of that as your grandma, and, you're going to help her bake cookies and play parcheesi and maybe do a little shopping for her. And you know what? That's not the real world. So again, we're setting these people up for failure because we're not telling them what the real job is. So we want people, if we go through our training, to be able to communicate and interact in a therapeutic manner with clients and their family members. Again, you may be, family members don't always live in the neighborhood or even in the same state. I served in the military for 22 years and I never was stationed next door to my parents as they aged out. And so you might be the eyes and ears of somebody. Protect, support, and promote the rights of your client. And, and provide the care duties in a safe manner while practicing, can't read my own stuff. But, you have to take care of yourself. You can't, lifting techniques and all that, transferring and that, you have to protect yourself so you can help someone else. And you have to recognize, and we talk about that, we recognize situations that may be beyond our control, maybe beyond our abilities, and who to help. Who can help provide that? Caregiver can't be everything to everybody, but if you're in someone's house and you notice maybe there's not enough food, then you should know who to reach out to if there's food scarcity in a home, and who can help fix that, who can write that. So who do we use as trainers right now? Well, again, we use the cared for. Dorothy is often the one that is one of the first speakers in class, and other people. But you got to know what the cared for is looking for. You got to know what the cared for are expecting of that, because it's a humbling thing for a lot of people as they age. I think of my own parents. Both of my mom and dad were born on farms that still used horses when they were young. My mom didn't have electricity until she was 13. Didn't have indoor plumbing until she married Dad. And people like that, and all of us think we're independent. And people like that are often very independent. My mom used to say, but I'm the one that helps others. I'm the one that's cared for people. And they are not often accepting of that. So we need to hear from them. Experienced caregivers are in the training that we give, and you can listen to their experience and what they've learned and how. Nurses we use for anything from HIPAA and bloodborne pathogens. Social workers come in. We have people that come in and talk about mental health and talking to, communicating with the disabled or communicating with people with Alzheimer's or dementia. And then we have a doctor of physical therapy comes in and teaches people on the transferring techniques and the safe ways of doing it so you don't hurt yourself. We have a lawyer that comes in, she's on our board of directors and she's certified in elder law and talks about that part, the legality of the training. And then we contract people to teach CPR. And right now, our classes are funded by grant money. And so we not only are they free to the caregivers, the potential caregivers, that we actually pay them to be there, help them with gas money or daycare and that. And so right now, and then people that are welcomed in are family caregivers, individuals that have been asked by their neighbors to be their caregiver, people that want to become paid caregivers, and the parent, people in the school system that take care of our disabled as they go to school and help them get through are welcome to be in our classes. And in fact, that's the individuals that we want to help. Incentivize, inform, and encourage individuals to provide that care, preparing them properly, telling them the real world of what you're going to be doing, and then incentivizing them to do it, whether it be that it is a good career or what is the benefit for them. And so we're working with high schools and colleges, universities, so they can be a part of the fix. And really, I'm talking about community and cultural enrichment, because all of us have a vested interest in this crisis, because we, none of us are getting any younger, and none of us know what tomorrow is going to bring. But I think in the community and cultural, the young people in schools and that, they can benefit a lot from being a caregiver. They can learn a lot of things. And it's a skill that they don't know it yet, but most likely in their life, it's going to be something they need to know how to do. And whether it be as we care for our elderly parents, I use the phrase, and I've heard many times, it's the parent becomes the child and the child becomes the parent. And there's nothing in our life that prepares us for that. So there's other career fields that already have the skill sets for this, and empty nesters even, but how can we find the people that can be it? So we provide scholarships to college students who enter into the job as a caregiver, and you have to work as a caregiver. So you can earn some scholarship money and you can learn some really important things. We have some grants that we give, and we've been successful in the scholarships and that to help students pay off student debt. And again, working as a caregiver and caring for somebody could give you an awful good insight that you may not be getting by learning it in the books, whether you're a nursing student or a social worker or a clergy or a special ed teacher. Some of those lend themselves directly to what we're doing. You can work with people that are in the situations of people who you're going to be dealing with every day as you get your new career. But again, this is all based on it. And then you're going to learn a skill that's transferable anywhere in the United States. You can be a caregiver. And you don't have to do it full time. 10 hours a week can make a huge difference.
That's 10 hours that somebody who may not get to see many people, that's 10 hours they don't have to be alone.
And that can make a huge difference, because social isolation is a real thing. And I see it often. I've seen it as my daughter grew up, that even with her parents, all children don't want to spend 24/7 with their parents. They need other friends and they need to learn from the community and that. But social isolation and it is a real thing. But that 10 hours, it doesn't have to be a commitment or a job. But again, one of the benefits that I think we all get from being a caregiver is we're learning a skill, even if at that time we don't need it, but we learn it.
And the cared for can be caregivers too.
And that's a wonderful point.
Yeah.
Because Dorothy volunteered for hospice. So Dorothy has a caregiver, but yet she is a caregiver. And that's a thing that I firmly believe in, that the cared for can also be caregivers.
And probably, I would imagine, being cared for gives you a good perspective as a caregiver, because you can appreciate both sides.
And I think that's a good point. You can already understand when you show up of what that person may be feeling, maybe what situation they're in. You may be able to communicate with them. So good point. So I got a quote here that I truly like. There are only 4 kinds of people in this world: those who have been caregivers, who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And I can tell you, everybody listening to me right now, just about everybody in the United States falls at least into one of them, if not many of them. Because the statistics show, as I pointed out, 49% of us will use a caregiver as we reach the end of our lives, as we age out, if you will. And then there's many other reasons why that we need it. But I think that's, to me, a quote that kind of says it all. So caregiver work, I think we touched on this, but it's needed 24/7. Christmas morning, somebody in our country, somebody in your neighborhood needs a caregiver. And that caregiver has to show up. You know, when I was in the military, we had a phrase of a no-fail mission. Caregiving, to me, is a no-fail mission. A lot of people that are cared for cannot get out of bed in the morning until a caregiver shows up. And I'm sad to say that we see this often. And again, I'm not here to naysay and point out what I think the motives of some people are. But if a caregiver doesn't show up, we call them no-shows, and they happen on a frequent basis. In fact, I think it's an epidemic right now. That individual has already been in bed 8 or 10 hours. And when a caregiver don't show up, and maybe they have to wait till their afternoon shift to get there, they're going to be in bed another 8 or 10 hours. And I find that unacceptable, but it happens. But again, caregiving is not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart, but it is needed 24/7. So what is the benefits of ending this shortage of in-home caregivers? One is something we don't have today is will be available when needed for the future. As we talked about, it's a 33% or 30% growth in that. The doubts and uncertainties felt by recipients of care today will be relieved. Again, no one should wonder if somebody's going to show up when scheduled. And then what's the experience of that person? And there's an individual that I talk to on a regular basis that receives care. And in 1 week, and he keeps track of this, he keeps track of his no-shows, he keeps track of this, 5 brand new on their first day, their first cared for, he experienced that. 5 brand new people, and they were all nice people, and they all didn't have a clue of what he needed because they didn't even know his name. They were all dispatched to him, and he ended up the trainer of 5 caregivers in 1 week. And again, that kind of thing are what drives me. The unethical behavior by some of today's companies and some caregivers will be diminished. And again, not all care companies are created equal. There's some wonderful ones out there that are hands-on and the people are there. And there's some that I firmly have come to believe through seeing it with my own eyes that they over schedule and they under deliver on a daily basis. And that is truly heartbreaking. So there will be enough caregivers for backup. That's not available today. There's not enough caregivers to fill the need there is today. And there certainly aren't enough caregivers to be a backup pool. So, you know, we're all human. We all have experienced a snowstorm. That does happen here. A flat tire, a sick child, many things that keep us from going to work in a day. And right now that there's no backup to fill that void. There's not enough to fill the need, let alone to have some backup. So keep people living in decency and dignity at home. I can trust, and I can tell you right now, care facilities are there for a reason, long-term, they're needed. There's an appropriate time, but it shouldn't be the first answer when someone needs a little bit of help. So I want to stay at home. My parents wanted to stay at home.
I want to stay at home.
Dorothy wants to stay at home. And that's the right thing to do. I try to put myself in those shoes all the time. And we can help end that social isolation, because it is a real thing. Make a positive difference in someone else's life that needs a little bit of help. And, I use the phrase here that most of us think we're independent, and truly our independence comes from either we work and we can afford, because I know none of us build the cars we drive, and most of us don't build the house we live in or grow the food we eat, but our independence comes because we can transportation to the store. We can take care of ourselves. We can cook our own food. We can shower ourselves. And but not everybody has that. So the only that makes us independent is that ability of those activities of daily living. So what are we doing, CIP? Well, we are informing the public. This is one of them. And we do TV ads, and we do radio, and we do meetings in the Caregiver Academy. So somebody's got to start it somewhere to start that training. And market forces in the long run, they don't happen overnight. But we had our first class in April of 2021, and we had some students come, and we had 2 more classes since then. So we've had 3. We've gotten feedback from each one of those students, and most of it has been very positive. And so we wanna, and we're not working alone, because I don't want to create something that's already out there. But so the Caregiver Academy, we have some curriculum that we teach, and we put that together with all those people we were talking about. The ones that live it every day are the ones that told us what was needed. So we're awarding them scholarships. It's been pretty successful. And again, you don't have to be in the study. You don't have to be looking for a career in social work or medical on that. You can be a truck driver if you want. But we award scholarships to help influence people to become or stay as caregivers. And it's working very well. And then we've got a grant now, develop a caregiver pipeline. We do have some grant money, but as all of you know, grants are not meant to sustain you, they're meant to start you. And so right now, our latest grant has asked us to develop that caregiver pipeline, something that we've already been working on to start identifying and informing people and influencing them to become caregivers, and then training them, screening them, and training them as caregivers, and then placing them with good companies. But we need it to be a career, and we need it to be a career that's recognized. If we're going to influence people to do it, some people can do it short term, but if you're going to do it for a career, then all those other things need to come into play. We're trying to raise funds for those scholarships and stipends. And one of our pledges from the beginning is donated funds received, we'll take it back and we'll spend it in the area as close as we can to where the money came from. And so we're partnering with a lot of groups, colleges and universities. We have a nice relationship with Northern Michigan University, their Department of Rural Health, and they see the value in the work we're doing. And Michigan Works helps fund some trainings and workforce development. Imbard Alliance is born out of Michigan State University down there, and they are doing a lot of good in the world. The Veterans Administration have a lot of elderly and a lot of people that came back from war that need care. And then care provider companies, people that come to us with no hidden agendas, we're more than happy to partner with, and in fact, encourage that. So what do we else we got? And I'm not going to go into these, but we have a smart path, and that talks about, it's more like the help and influence people with help with student debt payments, help with scholarships and that. Care close to home. Back to that, Upper Michigan has the most people living, elderly living at home. Well, we are pretty rural, just by the fact that Upper Michigan is 1/3 of the land mass that makes up the state of Michigan, and we're 3% of the population. So I think our cities are even kind of rural. So we have quite a good test bed out here. But care close to home is if you're commuting into a city 40 miles away and your job is stocking the shelves, that maybe we can find you a good job in your neighborhood caring for another person and be properly trained, properly paid, and have a career. And the action group is a step up from a support group that we want individuals, and we want to be able to, if you have an issue, and not only listen to you in it, but we want to help you with that issue, if it's financial or if it's finding care or if it's respite. We want to know the agencies. We don't have all the answers, but we hopefully will know maybe where to send it. So we are testing it here, refining it, prove that it works, and then spread it across the UP and then all of Michigan. And then Michigan, when this does get fixed, can show the rest of the country, because there are studies going on, and there are looking at other states. And I've gotten mail from the city of Portland, Oregon, two brothers, and they said, it's so broke out here. As soon as you figure it out there, come here and help us fix it. I've gotten the same from Alaska and different other states that we wish you well. They sent money, and they said, please come fix it here too. So believe it or not, there's people and individual organizations out there that do not, and I emphasize that, do not want CIP to succeed. In fact, I have had people on the phone hollering at me, you can't do this. Well, it's a good thing that I didn't ask their permission, and I don't need their permission. And we as a team don't need their permission, but it's a sad thing that there are people protecting their own little kingdoms that don't want us to succeed. And so what you can do to be part of the fix, you can join this grassroots, because again, we're at the level, we are at ground level. We live this. Dorothy lives this every day. I, as her father, live this every day. That one caregiver that we have that's paid lives this for 20 some years. And so the people I talk to, the people that surround me, the people that are on my team, and the advisories, and all these individuals that I communicate with, we live this every day. And so the fix has to come from us. We know it, we live it. So spread the word about this crisis, because it is a crisis. Talk to your lawmakers. I've tried to do that. I've had a little bit of success. And some of them recognize that, they are the facilitators, if you will. They're the ones that, and the regulators, they're the ones that can change the rules and change budgets and do that. But it's the people that live it every day that really has to make the difference. So you can become an in-home caregiver. You can help care for your neighbor. You can volunteer to help those in need. And a lot of people do this already. More of us could do that. We can rake the leaves of our neighbor. And there's a lot of organizations that help do that. Raise funds for the Caregiver Incentive Project and donate to it. And as I said, grants, we've been very successful. We have a delightful individual that does our grants. And we have been successful. But as most of you know, grants are the things that get you started. Donations and funding like that are what sustain you. And that's where we need help. We have a website there, the-cip.com. And we do take donations over that. And on there is our address too. We do take checks in the mail. And we do need your help. So who will benefit from this? The cared for, certainly. That's who we told you at the beginning slide, that ultimately we are here for the cared for. We want to improve their lives. To do that, we need to support caregivers and have caregivers, and have trained and supported and taken care of caregivers so they can do their job. Students, I think, because of the scholarships and that. But again, that community enrichment thing, if we ingrain into a student and into colleges and into the culture that we need to value our elderly and our disabled and that, and take care of them at the end. One of the things I talk about when I talked about Dorothy was premature. It was Thanksgiving Day, and yet everybody was there, and they kept calling in people, and the janitorial staff was there. The food prep served my wife a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner after she gave birth to Dorothy. The people in the NICU, the doctors, the nurses, and no one of them complained. And they were there, and they are properly paid and properly supported in that. But yet on the other end of the scale, as we reach the end of our lives, the caregivers, those very same people that we need, those angels on earth, I call them, we don't support them, and we don't take care of them, and we don't properly fund them. So every one of us will benefit when we end this crisis. So are we going to have an effect on student debt? I don't know. So I was a process engineer in the Air Force. I was superintendent of it for the Air Combat Command. And some of the things I learned, I'm going to share with you right now, that you can't leave those that created the problem in charge of the solution. This has been festering for over 30 years. And I know that because I talked to caregivers that had been in it for 30 years. I talked to people 20 years ago that tried to find help for their mother, tried to help take care for their father, and it wasn't working back then. And then COVID kicked it into high gear because caregivers were not seen as frontline workers. We're not provided PPE. We're not provided all that stuff. And yet, most of them kept coming to work every day. They left their loved ones to come into someone else's house and care for someone else's loved one. So those that built the box, and this is an old saying that, you know, you can't think outside of the box. Well, they can't. And what they're usually busy doing is defending that box. We did a lot of good 30 years ago, and I'll give them the credit, but 30 years ago isn't the fix today. And again, it's been festering for over 30 years. And I hear that from not only the Caregiver, but some of the ones in the agencies that are overseeing this. They talk about their first meeting 30 years ago. Somebody stood up and said, there's not enough caregivers. So that lived the crisis. When you live it every day, you need to be front and center creating and implementing the solution. And I can tell you another one there that, and I'm sorry it went by too fast, but being in the room isn't being included. And Dorothy can tell you that in her own personal life. That if you have one person on your team and they're in the room, Dorothy often in school was told, sit in the corner and don't get hurt. You're at best an audience, and that's not included.
That was what my school considered inclusion in mainstream education, was to have me sit in the room in the corner and watch. That's not inclusion. Yeah, so being in the room is not being included, and that's on a team or an improvement or anything. So I wanted to hear from a couple caregivers here that both, this young lady is on my team here. She just is graduating Friday as her pinning ceremony as being a nurse. And she's moving on to be— She's going to be a labor and delivery nurse and then a midwife.
And then she wants to be a midwife. So
I think very strongly that this job should not only be praised way more than it is, but it should also be considered a career path. When I started working with Drew, I knew it was going to be something different. We were able to just really be good friends during the entire experience. And while I did assist with a lot of medical things that he needed as far as medicine, tube feeds and breathing treatments, and, if he wasn't feeling very good and things like that, what was more than all of that was being able to be a friend and him being a friend back.
I'm so thankful for this opportunity, and I can't stress enough how it really started as me just trying to check a box for medical school, and really just developed into something so much greater.
I can confidently say that what I have gained personally and professionally through being a caregiver vastly outweighs what I have put in. Being given the responsibilities to be the hands, feet, mind, and voice of another human is one of the greatest, most fulfilling responsibilities there is, and one that should not be taken lightly.
I think.
So, if the shortage of qualified in-home caregivers is not resolved, it will affect us all. And many of that is as we near the end of our own lives. And to sum it all up, it's not. Will it affect you? The only thing you need to be asking yourself, when will it affect you? Because an accident tonight, slip and a fall on the ice tonight or tomorrow, and you could be in need of a caregiver. We don't get to pick those cards we're dealt in life. We only get to play them. And now when we're talking about this closing the disability guide, I'm going to brag about this young lady here a little bit. I do that pretty regularly there because I am a proud dad. But this is many things that she's accomplished in her life. And she is a guest lecturer at NMU and a spokesperson. She's a published author. And this is a true story about her overcoming those naysayers, because she had way too many in her life. And 99.9% of them were adults that told her, you can't do this and you won't do that.
So adults in the special education system.
And paras and that. So, and I know we're trying to, and we're closing this up right now, but I couldn't help but not share a proud dad moment with us. DEP books that's so you could order the book if you so find it. I find it inspirational. Some of the many things Dorothy has done is she was the first student at NMU to take ballet.
Well, first disabled student.
Yeah. And she went on to take other things and dance and
theater and music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that pretty much wraps us up. Where we started there, we're trying to improve the lives of the cared for by supporting caregivers. And I thank our host, and I thank you that listened. And our website there talks more about our programs, a lot more in depth. It has a place to donate. I would ask you to please consider doing that because we're on our way. And again, thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was excellent, an excellent presentation. Does anybody have any questions? If you raise your hand, I can unmute you, or you can type your question in the chat box and I will read it. You must have done really well, Eric. No questions.
Well, I hope so. I know some of the questions that we get are, how can we help? You know, I think I answered that. And again, the most shocking thing is that when I started to find out how broke this system is.
I see ones in the chat.
Yep, it says, thank you, Dorothy and Eric, from Heather.
Okay. So we know Heather. And
okay.
The local person. But so I formed that whole thing hoping that I was answering questions as we went through.
Yeah, it was very informative, very thorough. I thank you very much. If any of you who are on here want to recommend this presentation, Eric and Dorothy are doing another one at 6 o'clock tonight. So have them
tune in.
Well, I think actually what I'll do is I'll type my email address in the chat so you can just refer them to me.
Okay. Like I said, we are certainly thankful for the opportunity to help us get the word out. Mm-hmm. And I know you said you filmed it, so it'll be available if others that couldn't join in.
So the recorded session will be on our YouTube page. Okay. All right, if there's no more questions, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Dorothy and Eric. Appreciate your time. Oh, wait, Karen has her hand up. Hold on.
No,
go ahead, Karen, you're unmuted. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Did I?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Thanks so much. Diane, would you please put your connection back up so that I can capture it and to send on to others? The one that it was just up in the corner briefly and disappeared before I got it.
Up in the corner.
Well, that's where your, you know, when you said, I think I'll just give everyone
it should be in my email address is in the chat box, but I'll tell you what it is. It's d-do-at mi-ucp.org.
Yeah, it was there and it went away real fast, but maybe I can find it in the chat room. Thanks a lot. I'll go off.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Lindblom says, thank you both.
I hope we were informative.
You were. Thank you. All right, everyone, go have a nice lunch. And Dorothy and Eric, I'll see you this evening.
See you this evening.
See you this evening.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.